welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing kind of a different sort of fun new series that I'm going to be starting on my channel. Kind of a funny story. So this morning I knew that I had to film a video for my booktube channel and I was not sure what I wanted to film. So Snapchatting back and forth with my best friend Lane, and I was saying to her, like, I don't know what to film. I don't know what to film today. Like, what do you think? And she came up with this really, really great idea. And so she said to me, do you ever visit your books? And like, if you're a reader, you know exactly what she means. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, so many times I'll be going through my shelves and I'm just going like, oh, I remember reading you. Oh, I loved reading you. Or like, you know, a certain book, like as soon as you see it, a memory jumps out. Something that maybe happened while you were reading that book. So it can either be that you absolutely love the story, or you loved the time in your life when you were reading that book, like something like that. Something just kind of triggers you and you just get like those warm, fuzzy feelings in regards to that book. And I do that all the time. So see, this is totally her idea. She suggested that I do a new series called Revisiting My Books. So I'm just kind of go through, I have 5 of them today, and this is something that I'm going to continue to do because I have so many of them that I do this with. But today I'm going to be showing you 5 books that I revisit often and why. So the first book is called, see, this is such a hard one to even pronounce, like Sepulcher. I have no idea how to say this, but it's by Kate Moss. And I was a little bit concerned when I first picked this up. Like, it's pretty thick and I couldn't read the title and I was unsure if I really was going to like it or not. But I absolutely loved this book. So this book alternates between 2 different time periods. So it's back in the 1800s as well as current times today. So basically it's kind of in the 1800s, this young girl and her brother, she ends up going to stay at this aunt's house for the summer for, I think it was like 6 weeks. And she goes there and she realizes that this house, it's a huge, huge mansion that her aunt owns, is quite obviously haunted. So there's like some sort of supernatural events occurring. This is back in the 1800s, right? And then it like flips forward to today, and this house has now been turned into a hotel, and this young woman who's kind of trying to solve a mystery of her own goes there, and these 2 worlds end up colliding. I absolutely loved this book so much. But one of the reasons why I love it even more is I remember I was in my condo reading this book, and I had kind of just started it. And my boyfriend and I, at the time, my current boyfriend, we had been discussing possibly moving in together. And this was something obviously we hadn't done yet. We had just kind of only been dating for, I think, around 6 months or so. We moved in together quite quickly. But yeah, we had previously discussed moving in together, and you know, he wasn't 100% sure if he was ready to do that or not, so you know, whatever. But I was sitting there, I was at home, and I was reading this book, and I got a phone call from him. And so I picked it up, and he said, "Are you sure you want to live with me?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, I hope so, because I just rented out my house." And so like, it was a complete surprise. I didn't know that he was planning to do that. He had like went and got some renters and had everything all figured out, and that was kind of his way of telling me that he was ready to make that move. And so I was so happy, I was so excited, and that memory is entwined in this book because I was reading this book at the time when I got the phone call. So not only do I love the book, I loved the plot, I loved everything about it, but I have that really, really awesome memory, just a really, really pivotal moment in my relationship kind of attached to this book. So this is one that I revisit often. Next is a book that I have talked about many times on this channel, and that is my favorite horror novel of all time, The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. And this one I have read 2 times all the way through. I got this book when I was 16 years old. A couple of my friends and I had gone on our lunch break. We had went to the thrift store for some reason. This was when we were in high school, of course. We'd gone to the thrift store, and me being me, even back then, I found myself in the book section. And this was the only thing that I picked up that day, was this book. And I started reading it, and if you've ever read this book, you know that it's kind of like, it takes a long time. It's very thick. She's very chunky. She's very heavy. There's a lot of information there, and it's like, I don't want to say it's dry by any means, but it's kind of slow going at first. And it does take you a little while to get through, but at the same time, it's still very intriguing. It still does hold your interest. But it was kind of the first book that I read that it was at a level a little bit more advanced than I was. I was only 16 at the time, and I found this novel to be a little bit hard for me to get through at that age. So it took me a while. I think it took like well over a year for me to actually read this, and I had read other stuff in between it. But I remember sitting there reading this in the evenings, and I would get like kind of spooked out, of course, by certain parts, and so then I'd put it down for a while. And this is at the time when I was living in my mom's haunted house. So, you know, I'd get, things would get spooky, and I'd put it away for a couple of months and whatever. But so that was initially when I first read it. But then when I decided to pick it back up again, it was quite a few years later, and I was living in my condo, and I was just reading it in my bedroom. I just have such warm, cozy memories of it being like really cold outside. I think it was like in February when I was reading it. And I had just started dating my boyfriend at the time. And it was just so cozy, like having him out in the living room, and like I was reading this, and it was like, I just have such like spooky memories of it because it's my favorite horror novel, but also really good memories of just like being so relaxed reading this book. As weird as that sounds, because it's like scary. It's just, you know, like that feeling that you get when you're reading a book and you just have such good memories attached to it for whatever reason. Can't even really explain this one other than I'm like, under the covers, like it's a scary read, it's a snowy night, and you're all warm, and you got your bedside light on, and it's just so cozy, and you're reading a spooky book. Love this one, and I definitely want to reread this one again soon. Next, we have The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, and I really enjoyed this one. This one's special to me for quite a few different reasons. So this one was going to be my very first book that my friend Georgia and I read for our Bestie Book Talks, which I absolutely love that series, and there will be another one coming soon. Don't worry, we haven't stopped doing them. We've both been like crazy busy. She's gotten a new job. There's been some delays, but there will be more episodes of that coming out soon. But yeah, this one, so basically I have this habit when I'm reading books with her. She gets started way ahead of time, and I think I have all this time, and then I end up not reading the book until like the night before. So that was what happened. This was the very first book that we did, and that was what happened with this situation. I was going to go and meet her like that following weekend, or this coming weekend, and I had not read the book yet, like at all. So I had to basically read it all in one night. And my boyfriend was so awesome. I said to him, like, listen, I need to spend this entire night reading. You need to put our kid to bed. You need to like do all that stuff. And my son was a baby at the time. Like, I think he was maybe 10 months old or something like that. And so I was like, I need to just read this. So he said, okay. So he took care of everything. And I just went and crawled into my bed. Oh, this book is so beautiful. I can't get over it. And I just read the whole thing, and I was like in a panic because I knew I had to read it that night. I had to read it from cover to cover basically. So I just was like constantly being like trying to read it so fast, which was kind of unfortunate because I really rushed through it. But yeah, I did get it done in time, and we did our Bestie Book Talk, and yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I just had like so much fun. It was like kind of a challenge for myself. And I just get those warm, fuzzy feelings, kind of the same thing as The Witching Hour, like just I was in my bed, cozy, reading, and it was a lot of fun. Next, we have The Diary of Ellen Rimbar, My Life at Rose Red, and this book is based off of, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Winchester Mansion, where kind of the lady of the house kind of starts to go a little bit crazy, and she starts like getting people to build onto her house, and there's construction going 24/7. Like, this was an actual place. And it is, I believe her name is Sarah Winchester. She's the heir to the Winchester fortune. Her family, or I think it was her husband, designed the Winchester rifles, and she started to believe after a time that all of the victims of these rifles were coming after her. They've made like a movie about it and everything. There's a movie on Netflix about it, and this is a book based on that. So I really, I actually was looking for this book for forever. I remember my mom reading it years ago. Like when I was a kid, probably. When did this book first come out? Let's see here. 2001. So I would have been a teenager. But I wasn't like, when I was like a young teenager, I wasn't really into horror things. Like, they definitely intrigued me, but I was kind of scared of them at the same time. And I remember my mom reading this, and I was really intrigued about it, and her telling me about it. And I kind of wanted to read it, but I was also like kind of too scared to read it. And then she ended up lending it to my cousin, and we never did get it back. And I couldn't even remember what the book was called, but I just know that my mom had told me it was about this woman who keeps on, you know, saying that ghosts are telling her to add on to this house, and this house is getting ridiculously big, and there's like staircases that go to nowhere. I remember her telling me about all this. I remember that it was called something about Rose Red. That was the only thing I remembered. And then one day, I ended up coming across this completely by chance in a used bookstore in my town. My boyfriend was having a friend over that night, and they were like playing video games or board games or something. I can't remember. So I was just kind of like planning on just going to my room and reading while they have their boys' time or whatever. And I came across this novel, and I was just like so excited because, like I said, I could not remember the title of the book. My mom couldn't remember the title of it either. So I had always looked for it and wanted to read it as an adult. But so when I finally came across it, I just saw like something like Rose Red, and I was like, oh my God, is that the book? And I picked it up, and sure enough it was. So I spent most of that evening curled up in my room reading this book, and I absolutely loved it. And the last book that we're going to talk about today is Possessed by Kate Can, and this one I read just a few months ago actually. And this one is about a young girl. I think from the way that it's written, I think she's kind of like from the projects in the inner city. And she's kind of like trying to escape. Like she's got this overbearing boyfriend. I think he's like a drug dealer, and she's kind of trying to get out of that whole life. She kind of feels like she's been born into the wrong place, and she's like not where she's supposed to be. And so she ends up like wanting to find a job that kind of takes her away. So she finds this job. It's basically looking for a waitress at this, I don't want to say it's a resort. It's a really, really, really old mansion, and it's, I think, like 2 hours away from where she lives. She ends up taking this job, and she realizes that this old place is absolutely like there's something supernatural going on with it. And she thinks the place is haunted, and everything just kind of like goes on from there. But I just really, really enjoyed it. At the time, I hadn't read a good like horror novel in quite some time, so I really, really enjoyed this one. And once again, it's one of those things where I just have like cozy memories of reading in my bed and just falling in love with the story. So there's just something about falling in love with the story and its characters that just every time you see that book afterwards, you just can't help but get those warm fuzzy feelings, even if it's a horror novel. I can't understand it. Well, you guys, those are 5 books that I revisit often and that I absolutely love, and the reasons behind my loving them so much. So let me know in the comments down below what books on your shelf you revisit often. I would love to know, and I'd love to know if we have some of the same ones. Hope you guys are having an awesome day. I will see you in my next video. Bye.